You testified briefly about your background in order to become a law enforcement officer. I just want to touch on that for a moment, okay?
Yes.
I think you said that you had gotten a degree, correct?
Yes.
And was that in criminal justice?
Yes, from the University of Central Florida. It was a major in criminal justice with a minor in legal studies.
Okay. And when did you first consider law enforcement as a career?
After I got out of the military?
Okay. So you were in the military before you went to UCF?
Yes.
May I ask what service you were with?
I was with the Army.
And for how many years?
3.
Did you do any type of work sort of with military police or anything that gave you the insight that you might want to be in law enforcement?
No.
But at some point then after the Army and before college, you made a decision that you might want to consider law enforcement?
Yes.
Why is that?
I wanted to be able to help people, and there was issues in my family that I wanted to show that someone good could come from my family.
Okay. Have you enjoyed it so far?
Yes.
Glad that you made that decision?
Yes.
Been able to help?
I'm sorry?
Have you been able to help like you wanted to?
Not as much as I would like, but yes.
Okay. Sometimes a bit frustrating, I would imagine.
Yes.
But overall, a good profession to be involved in?
Yes.
You've done that now for, I guess, with SPD for just over 9 years?
Just shy of 9 years.
Just shy. Okay. And your involvement in this case was almost happenstance in that you were called in to help out, correct?
Yes.
Normally this may have just gone to whoever else. Had there been somebody else on duty already?
Yes.
But with back then, I guess, just shy of 7.5, 8 years experience, they decided to bring you in order to do the initial interview, correct?
Yes, Sergeant Santiago decided that.
Okay. And I presume that before February 26th, you certainly interviewed a number of witnesses before?
Yes.
And a number of suspects?
Yes.
How many of those suspects actually voluntarily give you information without asking for a lawyer?
Most subjects will actually speak with you. Most people will.
And how about in those cases involving a shooting?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay. In this case, of course, Mr. Zimmerman was what we call Mirandized, right? Given advice that he had the right not to talk to you at all, correct?
Yes, he was given that.
And as you testified in direct, you certainly did it in a proper way, and he evidenced that he understood it.
Yes.
And he freely waived it.
Yes, he freely waived it.
And you know, as law enforcement, even an initial waiver can be withdrawn by a suspect.
Yes, and that's explained to them during the Miranda warning readings.
And if at any time any person being interviewed decides to stop, they merely need to tell you that, and then it's over, correct?
Then it would end, yes.
And only until they decide affirmatively to re-engage you, or if you get permission from their lawyer, would you ever talk to them again?
That's right.
That never happened in this case, correct?
No, he never refused to speak with us.
Sure. He never refused to speak to you that night, either the first or second interview, sort of that break in between, right?
He never refused to speak to us anytime we asked.
And you testified concerning Investigator Sereno's interview with him where you Mirandized him again, and of course he acknowledged those rights then, did he not?
Yes.
And waived them again affirmatively?
Yes.
And never during that interview did he reassert any right to remain silent, did he?
No, he never did.
And you're familiar with the reenactment video where he actually went out to the scene and walked through what had happened, what turned out to be the night before, correct?
Yes, I was there.
Yeah, and of course, that was done voluntarily, correct?
Yes, it was.
That could not be forced upon him, could it?
No, it could not be.
And it wasn't in this case, was it?
It wasn't.
So every time that George Zimmerman spoke with you, it was voluntary?
Yes.
And he was given full notice he had the right to stop at any point?
Each time, yes.
Let's then talk about the initial interview, and I want to sort of set the stage a little bit for the jury to understand what you knew and maybe what George Zimmerman knew about what had gone on before the interview. So let me ask you. did you know anything about this case other than it was a shooting and you were talking to the person who had shot the other person?
That's about as much as I knew.
Yeah. Because basically you were brought in, there was a lot going on at Retreat View, Twin Lakes, and they had to get him talked to away from the scene, and you were the person to do it, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, we had heard one sort of interaction between you and law enforcement during the interview process, which is where I believe it was Sergeant Santiago talked to you about looking into the videotaping question, correct?
Yes.
All right. Was there any other times during the initial interview with George Zimmerman where he was advised what information existed at the scene?
No. He could not have. I didn't know.
Okay. For example, you know, correct, now, that there was an eyewitness to a part of the event, correct?
I knew after that interview, yes.
No, I mean, today you know that, right?
Today I know that.
Beyond the scope of direct enrollments.
Overruled.
You know today that there was an eyewitness to a portion of the event, correct?
Yes.
You know today that there was a 911 call that has screams on it, correct?
Yes.
And of course, you know today that there are a number of other ear witnesses that heard things, and some of them saw other things at some point in this timeline of the shooting. You're aware of that now, right?
Yes, and I spoke with most of them.
Okay. From the questions and answers that Mr. Zimmerman gave you, did he evidence an awareness that he was aware that there was a 911 tape that had documenting at least somebody screaming that night?
The only thing he indicated is the person on the patio that saw him.
Yes. He
Well,
saw.
he's
I'm sorry.
said that he was going to call 911. That person told him that.
But Mr. Zimmerman never evidenced to you that he knew that there would be a call that actually documented his screamings, did he?
Objection. Calls for facts that are not in evidence that he was the one who was screaming.
I'll
Sustained.
rephrase it. As to that, then I'm sorry, I'll rephrase it. Did Mr. Zimmerman ever evidence to you that he knew there was a 911 call that would document somebody screaming for help?
No. During the interview, I suggested to him that possibly someone heard something that was overheard by 911, and he agreed that maybe it had.
But he had told you, even before that part of the conversation, that it was he who was screaming for help, did he?
Yes. Yes.
And you've become aware in this investigation that Officer Tim Smith,
Objection is the hearsay.
Let me
Not
hear the
all-
rest of the question.
you've become aware during your involvement in the investigation that Officer Tim Smith was told by Mr. Zimmerman that he was screaming for help,
Same objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
correct?
Ask again, please.
Sure. You became aware during your involvement with the investigation that Officer Tim Smith, the first officer on the scene, right, was told by George Zimmerman within moments after Officer Smith's arrival that George Zimmerman was screaming for help.
Yes, I've learned that.
Okay. And that, of course, was well before any suggestion that you may have said to him that a 911 call may actually document screaming for help.
I never suggested that to him, ever.
He had also told you that during the altercation, and I'm going to use names, obviously you didn't know Trayvon Martin's name during the interview, correct?
I did not know the victim's name.
I'm going to use his name as I question you, if I might, as though you knew it then. Obviously, I know you
Okay.
realized you found it later, but just so we can keep the names separate and identified, okay?
Okay.
When Mr. Zimmerman stated that Trayvon Martin was hitting his head on concrete, had you given Mr. Zimmerman any evidence of that a witness existed to document that?
Objection.
No, I wouldn't have.
Just a second, there's an
Mr.
objection.
O'Mara testifying as to what somebody else said if this witness had no knowledge of it.
Sustained.
I might rephrase it then, Your Honor. Did you have any information from any source that you related to Mr. Zimmerman that there was an eyewitness who had documented the smashing of the head on concrete?
Same objection as to Mr. O'Mara testifying as to what somebody else possibly said, unless this witness told this
Okay,
defendant.
there's a speaking objection, but you need to lay a foundation
Okay, yes,
before
Your
you
Honor.
ask that question.
You've become aware, of course, over the time of this investigation, that there is an eyewitness who documented that Trayvon Martin was smashing George Zimmerman's head on concrete, correct?
Yes, you may approach.
I apologize.
Can I continue, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Suffice it to say, officer, that there was nothing available from law enforcement, no information available from law enforcement that was given to Mr. Zimmerman before he gave his statement to you, correct?
I didn't have any information that I could have even possibly given.
And there were no other police reports that had already been generated that he may have seen or anything like that, correct?
Nothing had been generated so far.
Is it accurate then to say that this was in one sense the virgin interview where you were getting all the information from him that you could, though you had nothing even to corroborate or to dispute what he was telling you?
That is correct.
You had mentioned, and I'm going to skip around just a little bit and hit
Okay.
subjects rather than the timeline. I think the timeline was going through, and of course, the entirety of your true interaction with Mr. Zimmerman was on the tape, correct? There was small bits that were not,
A little bit before I could get it started,
right?
introductions to each other when I
Yes.
walked in the room, I'm sure, and something that may have been said as I walked out, but
Sure. The substance of it we've all heard now from the tape itself.
yes.
And as to that interview, you don't have a great deal of testimony that you can offer the jury except to listen to the tape, correct? For
Pretty
the most
much.
part. Okay. So why are we questioning you?
You may proceed.
So then why then will we spend a few minutes questioning you? We're going to try and move it along, but obviously, as you know from previous testimony, I just want to make sure we set the stage properly and anything that may have some inquiry, and then we'll move forward. So
Okay.
let's go to one of the parts that were talked to about by Mr. Del Rionda concerning what wasn't on the tape. And that was the part about whether or not you were Catholic or Christian. And I want to just spend a moment on that, if I might. He had noticed your cross, I think you said?
Yes.
And asked you whether or not you were Catholic.
Yes.
And he told you that he was Catholic?
I don't know that he said he was Catholic. He asked if I were Catholic, and I told him that I wasn't, so I assumed that he was Catholic.
All right, and then you told him you were Christian, and his response was what again?
Because in the Catholic religion, it is always wrong to kill somebody.
And your response to that?
Was that if what you're telling me is truthful, then I don't believe that that is what God means when he means to kill somebody.
Is it your opinion that if what he was telling you is true, presuming that it was true, it was your suggestion then to comfort him in whatever he was working through?
To let him know if he was being truthful that he was in fear for his life and he had to kill Trayvon, that I don't believe that was what God meant.
Okay. And then I think it was just right after that that you had said that Trayvon Martin was not identified yet?
We did not know who he was.
And
at
that
time.
was, yes, and that was when you communicated that to George Zimmerman, correct?
I don't know if it was directly at that same moment, but yes, we spoke about not being able to know who the victim was.
Mm-hmm.
Or I made a statement, I don't know what was in response to, was that we hadn't yet identified the victim.
And his response was that he didn't even realize that Trayvon Martin had passed, correct?
He gave me, like a blank stare on his face and said, what do you mean? You don't know the victim? I said, well, we don't know who he is. And he said, he's dead? And I asked him, I said to him, I thought you knew that.
At which point he just sort of sunk his head down, looking down to the floor? Or to
Well,
his stomach
towards the table.
on the table, and shook his head no?
Yeah, something like this, and then, like he was just,
What did that evidence to you?
I believed him that he didn't realize he was dead based on what I had seen, but I don't want to speculate as to what it meant beyond that. I'm not sure.
There was questions about, and it was on tape, about him needing medical care. That was a concern of his, was it not, at least at one point?
Yes, at one point he said he wasn't sure if he should go.
Okay. But it was such that you talked about it and he was willing to continue with the interview rather than go to the hospital, correct?
Yes.
Did that cause you any concern?
No, only because FD had already seen him, and I assumed that they had said it was okay for him to come to the police department if he had.
During the interview with you, and I know that you would defer to the tape, but since you were the one sort of three-dimensional there with him, did he evidence that he was angry with Trayvon Martin?
No,
That he had hatred for him,
no,
spite or ill will?
no,
That he had anything that would suggest to you some type of bad attitude towards Trayvon Martin?
no,
Rather, he seemed to be affected by the fact that he realized that Trayvon Martin had passed?
he seemed affected by that.
You were, aside from Officer Tim Smith, really the first officer to have a detailed conversation, any conversation with him about this case, right?
Yes,
And that was about, you gave us the time, but tell us again if you can, if you recall the timing of it.
I believe I was called about 8 o'clock, so probably about prior to 9 o'clock, maybe I was speaking to him by
So,
then.
and if this happened at 7:15, 7:30, and he was transported after being seen by medical, you got to him within an hour and a half of the event?
I believe so.
Do you know if he had contact with anybody else besides Sanford Police Department?
I don't know, I only know what was told to me.
And that was,
Rescue, police, that was all I knew about.
of course, though not arrested, he was in police control or custody literally from the scene forward, was he not?
Yes,
And his phone was taken from him, correct?
yes,
Mention was made that, first of all, you took the tape statement, correct? And we've heard that. And then you asked him to do a written statement. Why have both?
I believe Chris Serino asked me to have him put it on a written statement. I believe Chris Serino had asked me to have him put it on a written statement as well.
Okay. And with that microphone, it's very sensitive. If you get within about an inch or so, we can't hear. If you get more than 5 inches back, we can't hear you. So there's a range in there that if you can try and stay within, it'll help the jury hear us and all of us.
I'll try.
Thank you. Okay. You've had a chance to look at both of those statements, correct?
Yes,
And of course, you heard yours today, and you heard the tape today, and you even had to read the second one today, correct?
I don't recall reading,
No, I mean.
having
just
read
now.
the written one prior to today.
But you just read it today?
Yes.
Okay. In 9 years or so of law enforcement experience, did you notice any significant inconsistencies in those two statements?
Significant? No.
But there were certainly some, weren't there?
I'm sure there's some.
Is that expected in your business?
Yes, most people don't tell you the same story the same way twice each time.
Why is that?
I don't know, I mean, just telling a story, you don't tend to get the exact details the same each and every time.
Okay, so when you looked at those two statements, did you consider them to be significantly different, such that you thought he was lying on one or fudging on one?
Well, I couldn't have made that determination then because I hadn't read the statement back then.
I mean, right now.
Right now, no, I don't see any significant differences.
So in your experience, when taking multiple statements from a witness, sometimes there are differences?
Yes,
How about witnesses who have gone through traumatic events? Does that affect their ability to recount stories?
yes, as well as the same
Why is
event
that?
being viewed by two different people, it's sometimes different.
Okay. And how does a traumatic event affect their ability to retell stories multiple times?
I'm not sure how it works, but I just know that it happens.
Okay. You were present during Investigator Serino's statement as well. Well, the statement he gave to Officer Serino as well, correct?
Yes,
And did you notice significant differences in that statement compared to these two?
not significant, no.
But some minor changes?
Some minor differences, yes.
And do you recall what they were?
I remember one where he told me that he walked away. And then in the interview, when we listened to the tape, he was telling the dispatcher that he had ran away. Like, he was running.
And when the he you're talking about, at one point he told you, he being George Zimmerman, told you that Trayvon Martin walked away,
Walked between the houses.
walked between the houses. Yet a review of, let's say, Investigator Serino's statement suggests that he told Investigator Serino that Trayvon Martin had run away. And that's a difference that you noticed?
Right, and that's what it said. What he had said on the dispatch was that he ran.
Right, and I was going to say, we know from previous evidence that the dispatch non-emergency calls suggest that he ran away, and you're aware of that, aren't you?
Yes,
And that was a difference that you noted?
yes,
Consider that to be significant?
no.
Why not?
Because I just assumed that he had come in and out of view at least twice, according to him. And whether or not he was running or walking, I
Did
don't
it
think
seem...
was significant, mattered.
Okay. Do you attach, when you look at different statements and determine whether or not the differences are significant, do you attach to those differences whether or not they help tell a narrative that might be beneficial to the witness or opposed to another witness? Is that part of what you look at?
Yes, part of what we look at.
Okay. So if running or walking isn't significant to the overall narrative, it doesn't seem to catch you as being a significant difference?
It had been prior to, the running and walking occurred prior to when we know on the 911 call he had lost sight of him. So it wouldn't have changed anything. So that's why I didn't feel it was that important.
Okay. When he said to you that he had walked through past the T because he wasn't sure of the name of the street that he had just left, did that cause you any concern?
I thought that as a neighborhood watch person, he would have known the names of the streets, yes.
Okay. So tell me how you absorbed that or what you thought about that.
I was wondering if he was wanting to get out of the car.
Okay. And have you had a chance to go down by the scene to see whether or not there is street signs at that area?
I know there's no street signs where he said that he parked.
Were there any questions that you asked him or any changes in his story along the way that caused you concern?
Not significantly, no.
You've had those cases, haven't you? Where witnesses are telling you a story, you might question them a little bit, and then all of a sudden they remember a whole different fact?
Yes,
Okay. Any of that happen here?
no.
when he told you that Trayvon Martin got up or said something to him, words like "you got me," or words to that effect, did that surprise you?
No,
And when he said that he had gotten on top of Trayvon Martin to spread his hands or to do something, and he had told another person to help him, did that cause you any concern? Is that part of the presentation by Mr. Zimmerman?
no.
In the written statement that Mr. Zimmerman wrote out for you, focus was on the fact that he called Trayvon Martin a suspect. Did he know Trayvon Martin's name at that time?
No,
Did you?
no,
Okay. So he had to be called something, would you agree?
yes,
Did you consider to be suspect such an outrageous term to use that it caused you concern?
I didn't read it at the time.
How about today?
No, I don't think it's unusual.
Okay. Just have a moment now. When Mr. De Leon suggested to you that Mr. Zimmerman was claiming that this happened, and was claiming that happened, and that he claimed to be going through this, was that what he was saying to you when he was talking to you? I hereby claim that I was in fear. I hereby claim that I was walking down this
No,
roadway.
he didn't say it that way.
He was just talking to you as he was in the tape, right?
Yes,
And similarly, in the written statement, that was just him giving his story both verbally and in writing, wasn't it?
yes,
You had stated that there were two things I think I wanted to focus you on. At one point, you had stated that Mrs. Zimmerman told you that he thought Trayvon Martin might have come from some bushes. Is
Yes.
that correct? And then you also stated that he had said to you that he wasn't really exactly sure where he came from.
that's
Is that
correct.
correct?
Yes,
Do you consider that to be a significant concern, or just him attempting to explain things for you?
I didn't think that was significant because he said it was dark out there.
You've seen some of the pictures out there that night, right?
Yes,
Would you agree, if I use the term pitch black, that it was pretty much pitch black out there?
yes,
And you know that there are first of all, you know that there are bushes out there, correct?
there's bushes, I believe, on the end of the buildings.
I'm going to have just a moment.
And also, I believe there's bushes around some of the people who have air conditioners, they go around, I believe. There's bushes in those areas as well.
I might have a moment to have a couple of these marked on it. And there may not be an objection, so I'll just move them into evidence.
There's no objection. I believe they're.
I think they're in. For ease of use, I have them right here.
Do you want to use them as a composite exhibit or
I
individually?
think the clerk likes us to have them individual, so I'll use individual if I might, Your Honor. Yes.
So if there's no objection, one of them, I don't know which one you're handing to the clerk first, will come in as Defense Exhibit 21. The second one will come in as Defense Exhibit 22.
Thank you, Your Honor. And may I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Officer Singleton, I'm going to show you pictures not of the way the scene was that night, but the next day, and ask if this is what you're familiar with. I'm going to show you both 22 and 21 because they're of a similar area. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, how there's bushes, I believe there's probably an air conditioner back here, and then this shows the end of the building.
So if you would just identify the number as you show it to the jury, if
There's
you would
likely a-
first, the number.
144?
It's,
Oh, HH.
It's 22,
Oh, this one, 22, okay.
thank you.
I believe there's probably an air conditioner back here, so there's some bushes there. And then this is the end of the building, and there's bushes along the wall.
And if you would show the jury the similar locations on Exhibit 21.
Here, and here.
And again, also further down in front of each unit, correct?
Yes, each unit has bushes around their air conditioners, from what I can tell from that
Okay.
picture.
Of course, none of those bushes had any lights in them from your view of the nighttime photographs, do they?
No, there's no lights in the bushes.
Thank you. So it was not a concern of yours that Mr. Zimmerman first said he may have come out of bushes and then said, not exactly sure where he came from?
Right.
Did that seem to be an event that, or a difference that could cause you any concern whatsoever?
No, I was just looking at the bushes while we were out there, trying to figure out, this kid's pretty tall, like what bushes, if he did come out of bushes, would he most likely be coming from?
Would you agree with the pictures that we saw of that night, that he could easily have simply just come out of the darkness?
Objection is speculation.
Sustained.
Nothing further than Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any redirect?
In terms of you have an opinion based on what he asked you, Mr.
Yes, he
Romero,
asked me for my opinion.
right? And when you agree with us, what is important is what the jury believes, correct?
It's important what they believe, yes.
Okay. Now, isn't it true, ma'am, when Mr. Romero kept asking you questions, that you had not been out to the scene at that time? When
I
you spoke to
wasn't,
the defendant?
I'd never gone to the scene that night.
And isn't it also true that the defendant is telling you that he thought the person you now know, the 17-year-old boy, was alive, correct?
I object, Your Honor, leading.
Sustained.
The defendant told you, I believe you told Mr. Romero that he said he was surprised to learn that Trayvon Martin was alive.
He didn't say that. When
How did he react when you told him he was dead?
he said he's dead,
And that left you the
Yeah.
impression that he thought he was alive.
that was my impression, that I thought he was alive, that I believed that he thought that he was alive.
And Mr. Zimmerman, the defendant, in his statements to you, told you that he was scared of the defendant, of Mr. Zimmerman, I'm sorry, of Trayvon Martin.
Let me object, Your Honor, that's a mischaracterization of the evidence and the testimony to date. So I would,
I'll be glad to rephrase it.
Okay, thank you.
In his statements to you, Mr. Zimmerman told you that he claims that the defendant was being bashed, his head was being bashed into the concrete, correct?
Slammed into the concrete.
Slammed. And he had to shoot the person you now know as Trayvon Martin, correct?
That's what he said he did.
That's what he said he did. You weren't there.
I wasn't there.
You don't know whether that's true or not.
No, I don't know whether that's true or not.
But he told you, at some point you told him that the victim was actually dead, correct?
Yes,
And how did he react?
shocked.
Okay. Do you know why, if Mr. Zimmerman, the defendant, claimed or didn't realize that the victim was dead, why he would holster his gun back if he was so scared of Trayvon Martin? If he was still alive, why he would holster his gun back?
objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Sustained is a speculation.
Do you know why Mr. Zimmerman told you he holstered his gun back? Did he elaborate on that?
Objection, Your, I'm sorry, I think that was a factual question, I apologize.
Did Mr. Zimmerman elaborate as to why he would holster his gun back if he thought the victim was alive?
He didn't put those two terms together.
That wasn't significant to you?
I don't know if that's significant.
Well, tell me, how many times have you gone out to a scene where you were trying to apprehend a suspect, right, a person that you
Yes.
believe is in committing a crime, and you don't believe the person or you think the person's a threat at you, do you holster your gun if the person's still at large or moving around?
No,
What do?
I wait till it's safe.
Right? You keep the gun on the person till you make sure he's either dead or he's apprehended, correct?
Yes,
By the way, did you use the word suspect or did he Mr. Zimmerman used the word suspect.
I didn't use the word suspect to him.
And so when Mr. O'Mara asked you about the word suspect not being significant, that is because you're used to using the word suspect when you're apprehending or describing somebody who you feel or you suspect is committing a crime, correct?
Yes, that's what I use.
Do you know why Mr. Zimmerman switched from using the word "they" to suspect when he referred to the victim?
Sustained.
You would agree that that would be pure speculation, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Her answer would be speculation, or, I'm sorry, I object on
The changing of
speculation.
the terms would be for her to be
Yes, Your Honor.
speculation.
You agree that that would be you speculating, correct?
Yes.
Just like all the questions that Mr. O'Mara asked you about significance and all that, that would be you speculating, correct?
Which question?
All the questions he asked you about whether you knew that Mr. Zimmerman, the defendant, had ill will, hatred, or angry at Trayvon Martin. You weren't able to get into Mr. Zimmerman's mind at the time he did the shooting, were you?
No.
You weren't able to get into his mind as to why he followed this person, were you?
Only what he told me.
So you didn't know what was in his heart or in his mind at the time that he sought out, or to use his words, followed the 17-year-old unarmed boy.
I only knew what he told me.
You were also asked about whether there was an eyewitness or not there. You hadn't interviewed anybody up to the point you interviewed a defendant, had you?
No, I didn't speak to anybody prior to speaking with Zimmerman.
If I can have a moment to ask. Mr. O'Mara asked you about the screaming. Remember Mr. O'Mara asking you questions about recording, about screaming?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Zimmerman, the defendant told you that he saw people out there, correct?
Yes.
So he had to have known that if somebody was screaming, whether it was him or somebody else, somebody would have heard it.
Someone potentially heard it because they came out and they said he's seen them.
Right?
Or he said he's seen at least one person.
Right. The defendant is just claiming that it was him. You can't say whether it was him or not, can you?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
You
the
can't
question.
say that it was Mr. Zimmerman, the defendant, who was screaming for help.
I can't say that, no.
Thank you, ma'am.
Just so we're clear, I had you talk about whether or not Mr. Zimmerman had ill will, hatred, spite, and the other ones that are necessary for second-degree murder. I wasn't asking you to speculate. I want to be very clear. What I asked you for was whether or not you had any evidence. You know what evidence, of course, is, right? So, did you have any evidence to support a contention that Mr. Zimmerman acted in your presence in such a way that you thought he had ill will?
And that's what I thought you asked me, and that's
I
what I
think
was
it was. I
answering.
just want to clear it
And
up.
no, he didn't evidence any of that.
You know, no spite, no hatred, no animosity, did he?
If he had it, he didn't show it.
So the only evidence you would be able to present on that issue, not your speculation, but just the evidence, would be that you didn't see any.
I didn't see him act out anything.
And I think you said that if you were in a shooting situation, right, even where you just have to draw your service revolver, you would not reholster it until you were safe. Is that accurate?
I would reholster it once I believed the threat was no longer.
Right. Like maybe when another officer came up with a flashlight,
Yes.
you knew you had backup, at that point, would you feel more comfortable putting it away?
Absolutely.
Okay. When another witness came up, and when you realized that the person who you just had to shoot was staying face down, would that give you good cause to believe it was now safe to reholster your weapon?
Yes.
Nothing further, thank you.
Any of you read that?
The ill will or hatred, what you're saying is that at the time you were interviewing, he was not showing ill will or hatred, correct?
Right.
Okay. Because he, Mr. Zimmerman, wouldn't you agree, was trying to convince you that he hadn't done anything wrong, right?
I asked him to tell me what happened, and he, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Singleton. Officer Singleton be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Can we approach your moment before we make that decision?
Yes.
Thank you.
Under subpoena. Thank you very much. State, please.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir. Could you state your name for the record, please?
Good afternoon, sir. Christopher F. Serino.
What is your occupation?
I'm a Sanford police officer,
How long have you been a member of the Sanford Police Department?
going on 16 years.
And prior to that, did you have some law enforcement experience, sir?
Yes, sir, I did.
Could you briefly tell us about that?
With the Department of Defense out of Pearl Harbor, Hawaii as a uniformed federal police officer.
How long were you so employed?
2 years.
What are your current duties with the Sanford Police Department?
A patrol officer.
Okay. And how long have you been a patrol officer this time? I know you've gone back and forth.
I believe since July or August of last year.
Okay. Back in February of 2012, were you assigned to the Investigative Division or Major Crime Section unit?
Yes, sir, I was.
And how many tours have you done in that unit and then also back to patrol? Is that a normal thing, or tell us about that briefly?
It's a lateral transfer position. This is my third tour back there.
I want to draw your attention to February 26th of 2012. Were you the on-call investigator, and did you respond to the retreat at Twin Lakes?
Yes, sir, I was.
Approximately what time do you believe you got there?
I believe I got there at approximately 8 p.m.
And when you arrived there, were there officers already present?
Yes, sir, there were.
Okay. Was the body of the person later identified to you as Trayvon Benjamin Martin still at the scene, sir?
Yes, he was.
And was the person who shot Trayvon Martin, that is George Zimmerman, still at the scene when you arrived?
No, he was not.
And did you remain at the scene and later go to the Sanford Police Department?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At the scene, did you speak to officers there?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you also meet with witnesses?
Yes, sir, I did.
When you first arrived, had the body of the victim, Trayvon Martin, been identified at that point?
No, sir, he had not.
Okay. And at that time, you didn't know who he was or whether he even lived in that area, is that correct?
No, sir, we didn't know.
Were attempts made to identify him at the scene, sir?
Yes, there were.
And can you briefly tell us how that was done, sir?
By facial recognition of officers that were there, by canvassing the area for potential people that may have known who he was. We ultimately were able to obtain a device. It's called the live scan device, and we checked his fingerprints to see if they were on file in our database, and we had no results.
So everything was negative in terms of being able to identify the person you now know as Trayvon Benjamin Martin?
Yes, sir. All attempts were negative.
Okay. And later, in fact, did you further check at the Sanford Police Department and his name did not appear in your all's records, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
Now, later that evening, did you end up going to the Sanford Police Department?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And do you recall exactly what time you got there?
It was around midnight.
Okay. When you came into the Sanford Police Department, did you end up having contact with a person now known to you as George Zimmerman?
Yes, I did.
Could you please identify him by stating where he is seen in an article of clothing that he wears?
At the defense table, Mr. President.
Your Honor, if the record reflect the witness identify the defendant.
The record will so reflect.
When you came into contact with the defendant, George Zimmerman, were you aware that he already had been interviewed by investigator Doris Singleton?
Yes, sir.
And did you have a very brief interview with him right after midnight, around 12:05 or so a.m.?
Yes, I did.
Okay. We'll pull it up. And before I play that, was that interview recorded in terms of a audio recording?
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay.
Investigators from
I apologize.
Police Department, today's date is.
For purpose of the record, Your Honor, I believe we need to introduce that into evidence as the next exhibit. It's going to be number 179, has previously been shown to defense counsel, and they have no objection.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay, comes in as State's Exhibit 179.
Investigators from the Sanford Police Department. Today's date is Monday, February the 27th, 2012. It's now 12:05 a.m. I'm located at the Sanford Police Station, 815 West 13th Street, City of Sanford, Sumner County, Florida. Present in the room with George Zimmerman, correct?
Yes, sir.
Your date of birth, sir?
10-5-83.
Highest level of education.
Associates.
Okay, you've been written in what?
Pardon?
In what?
Criminal justice.
Okay. You've been read your rights correctly?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you understand that you're not quite free to go because we're in the process of, but you're not quite going to jail, that kind of stuff?
Yes.
I got the gist of it all. I'm gonna ask a quick question. This photograph right here, I'm showing you right here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, do you recognize that face?
No, sir.
Okay, this is the person that had the incident with you today.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's gonna be important for you to understand. I'll show you the pictures later on. I don't know who he is, okay? Real briefly, I'm gonna give you what I got, okay? You were going to the store,
Yes, sir.
okay, and you saw somebody who felt to be suspicious?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this suspicious person, you, because of the break-in in the neighborhood, you decided to call 911?
No, sir.
Okay.
The non-emergency line.
You called 911?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the 665, 6650? Oh, the other?
5199.
Okay, so you did non-emergency, okay.
Yes, sir.
You reported a suspicious person?
Yes, sir.
You followed this person?
Yes, sir.
You lost visual on this person? Where did this whole thing start at?
Retreat View Circle in the.
Okay, tomorrow morning, daylight hours, do you work?
Yes, sir.
Where?
Digital Risk Maitland.
When do you get out of work?
5 a.m.
Okay, when do you start work?
9 a.m.
Okay, 5 p.m. tomorrow, when you get off work, when you get home, can you call me?
Yes, sir.
So we can go ahead and walk through the scene entirely?
Class tomorrow.
Okay,
I can skip it.
can you get a note? Who's your instructor? What are you taking? I mean,
I'm continuing for my bachelor's.
in criminal justice, which university?
Political science. SCC, the UCF.
UCF partnership, okay. What time's the class start?
6:30.
We could probably do this in half an hour, okay? I want to retrace your path, okay, exactly what happened. I want to videotape this. The difference between statutes and homicide and justifiable homicide, use of force, you're aware of them, you have a degree, you're familiar with what we're talking about here, right? Okay, you follow this person, you lose sight of this person, you're walking in the darkness out there, you have a flashlight?
It was dead. I had one, but it was dead.
You had to hit it a couple times, it's on right now, so.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, okay. It's probably the one I have, got to smack it around a couple times. This person jumped you from somewhere?
Yes, sir.
From the darkness?
Yes, sir.
Did he say anything to you?
Yes, sir.
What did he say to you?
When he came up to me, he said, "You got a problem?" And I said, "No." And then I went to reach for my phone to find my phone to call 911 instead of non-emergency.
Okay.
And then he punched me. He said, "You have a problem now," and then he punched me in the
Let's just say, okay, you have a problem now. Okay, he punched you, you fell.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you got injuries. Where you punched in your face or your chest or where?
In my face.
Okay.
My head. I mean, all over my head.
Okay, you cleaned up already because Officer Smith said you were pretty much battered when.
Yes, sir.
Okay. He mounted you basically?
Yes, sir.
And he started to beat up on you?
Yes, sir.
At what point did you draw your weapon?
After he hit my head against the concrete several times,
Okay.
I yelled out for help, and then he tried to smother my mouth and my
Who
nose.
yelled for help?
I did.
Okay, and at which point he did what?
He smothered my mouth and my nose.
Okay.
And when he did that, I tried to slide out and squirm.
Uh-huh.
And I realized my shirt came up. And I felt him slide his hand towards my right side.
Okay.
And he said, "You're going to die, motherfucker." And then that's when I grabbed it. I don't know if it was away from him or, I just unholstered
So he was going for your gun?
Yes, sir.
What kind of gun was it?
A Kel-Tec PF9.
9mm?
9mm.
Okay, semi-automatic?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What kind of ammunition?
I think it was hollow point.
Okay. Okay. What happened then?
I shot him
It was unholstered entirely? You cleared the holster
Yes,
and
sir.
you shot him?
Yes, sir.
One time?
one time.
Okay. When you shot him, what happened?
He kind of sat up and he said, "You got me."
Okay.
And so I don't remember if I pushed him or he fell, but somehow I got out from under him.
Uh-huh.
And when he was hitting me, I don't know what he was hitting me with. I thought he had something in his hands.
Uh-huh.
So I grabbed his hands when I was on top of him, and I spread his hands away from his body because he was still talking. And I was on top of him. And that's when somebody came, and they had a flashlight too.
Mhm.
And I thought it was a police officer, so I got off of him.
What was he saying when he was talking to you?
I don't know. After you got me, I don't remember.
Okay. If you're going to have anxiety over this and nightmares and everything else, so you're probably going to have a hard time with this whole thing. I'm here for that. That's all I can give you between now until tomorrow. I can get you other kinds of help afterwards, okay? But you got to go and get some rest. Is there anything else you want to add? So in your mind's eye, this person was committing no good over there. You followed in good faith to go ahead and see what he was doing. He jumped you. He attacked you, okay? He reached for your gun. You discharged. You got off of him. You only shot once. Police arrived. You surrendered, and here you are.
He told me he was going to kill me.
Exactly. He said he was going to kill you. Okay. Anything else you want to add? You've already admitted once, or you're probably done. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and do this thing with now 12:10.
Investigator Sereno, may I approach the witness, Your Honor? Investigator Sereno, you mentioned in the interview with the defendant that you showed him a photograph. Would this have been the photograph you would have shown him?
I believe so, sir.
Right, if I may publish that to the jury.
Yes, you may.
Investigator Sereno, when you showed him this photograph, the defendant told you he didn't know the person, correct?
That's correct, sir.
When you spoke to him, I want to show you some photographs. I'll probably need Ms. Waldrop's help. Get the photographs. Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, but you're on the side. You see that in front of you, State's Exhibit 64?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is this the condition that you observed the defendant, Mr. Zimmerman, when you spoke to him, sir?
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't think I need the lights anymore. My question is, when you spoke to him, did you have any problems understanding him when you spoke to you?
No, sir, I did not.
Did he have any problems understanding you, sir?
No, sir.
Did you threaten him in any way in order to get him to make any statements, sir?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you make him any promise in order to get him to make his statements?
No.
Your observations of the defendant that evening, did you consider those injuries to be minor, major, or what?
Minor.
You mentioned you made arrangements, and that recording is reflected, to meet with him later the next, I guess it technically would have been the morning of the 27th, later that evening, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, later that morning, before you made contact with the defendant, did you become aware of a missing person report that turned out to be Trayvon Martin?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you respond back to the scene and go to 2631 Retreat View Circle, where Brandy Green lived and where Trayvon Martin was staying that weekend?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach the witness again?
Yes, you may.
You have the chart, right? There's two of them. Investigator Sereno, I'll show you State Exhibit 140. When you came into contact with Brandy Green, and I believe also Tracy Martin, would that have been at 2631?
Yes, sir.
And is that where you understood Mr. Martin, Trayvon Martin, was staying the day he got killed?
Yes, he was.
Want to make sure I get the right place. It's right here.
The third?
Right.
Yes, sir.
Did you end up showing Tracy Martin the photograph, and did he identify that person as his son?
Yes, I did.
Now, sir, I want to draw your attention to February 27th, that same day. Did you later come into contact with the defendant, George Zimmerman, at the retreat at Twin Lakes, sir?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. And were you present when the defendant was interviewed? Specifically, he was put in a car with Sergeant Randy Smith, and you followed with Investigator Singleton, and then later the defendant actually gets out of the vehicle and demonstrates to you or describes what he claims occurred?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you reviewed that video?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And for the record, Your Honor, it's State's Exhibit 181. And Your Honor, before we play it, we do have an instruction that we would request the court to read at that time. It's titled, State's Proposed Jury Instruction Regarding Redaction of Defendant's Interview with Sanford Police Investigators.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, at the direction of the court, certain portions of the defendant's interview with the Sanford Police Department investigators have been excised or redacted based on legal determinations made by the court. The parts excised or redacted are not relevant, and you are not to concern yourselves with why this occurred or with the content of any excised or redacted portions. Thank you.
And with the court's permission, may we publish that to the jury now? said that this right here is going to be the defendant in Sergeant Randy Smith's car, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Everybody behave. And action. Passing retreat view, one retreat view. Today's date is February the 27th. It's now 5:20 in the afternoon, 17:20 hours. And this is reference to Sanford Police Case number 2012 5000
1136.
1136.
Right here, right in front of this house.
Okay. Right in front of 1460?
Yes, sir.
All right. And what was he was walking in between the buildings, or?
He was walking like in the grassy area, like up towards, kind of between these two poles, and like I said, it was rainy, and he was just leisurely looking at the house, and like I said, my wife I left for the grocery store, and I just felt like something was off about him.
Right.
So I said, and there's been a history of break-ins in that building, and I called previously about this house.
Right.
When the police arrived at this house, when I called the first time, the windows were open and the door was unlocked. And the police came and secured it, so I said, you know what, it's better to just call, and I kept driving. I passed him, and he kept staring at me and staring around, looking around to see who else was. I don't know why he was looking, but
Did he walk off from there, or did he stop there last night?
he stopped, and he like looked around, and that's what threw me off. Was it's raining. I didn't understand why somebody would be just stopping in the rain, especially, I mean, it wasn't like he was trying to run to get out of the rain, and I had never seen him before. Didn't look like he was exercising.
Where was he standing at when
Right there,
he stopped?
right in front of 14th.
On the sidewalk or in the grass?
Yeah, the grassy area.
Right in the grassy area. Okay. That's about right in front of where the car is.
Yes, sir.
And then you
I drove past him.
Okay.
And I went to the clubhouse.
All right.
Up here on the right-hand side.
And parked up there.
Yes, sir.
And what was his? Naturally, you're good. Naturally, he left. He caught up to you up here, or?
Yes, I called the non-emergency line, and when I got through, I parked at the clubhouse.
All right.
And they asked me, where I was, and I told them the clubhouse, and I think I gave them the address to the clubhouse.
Where'd you park at?
Right up here next to that green truck. I don't think that truck was there, but I just pulled up.
Okay. So you just pulled in here,
Yes, sir.
and this is where you got out?
No. This is where I just stopped to call, and then he walked past me, and he kept looking at my car, and still looking around at the houses and stuff. So then the dispatcher said, where did he go? What direction did he go in? And I said, I don't know. I lost, because he cut down here and made a right. I guess it's Twin Trees Lane. He made a right in there. And they said, well, what direction did he go in? And I said, I don't know. I can't see him.
Okay.
And they said, can you get to somewhere where you can see him? And I said, yeah, I can. So I backed out.
All right.
And I made this right. On the left here. And I parked right about where that sign is in the yard.
In front of the Ford truck.
Yes, and I saw him standing right about here. And I saw him walking back that way and then cut through the back of the houses. He looked back and he noticed me and he cut back through the houses. I was still on the phone with non-emergency. And then he came back and he started walking up towards the grass and then came down and circled my car. And I told the operator that. He was circling my car. I didn't hear if he said anything.
Right.
But he had his hand in his waistband. And I think I told the operator that. And they said, "Where are you?" And I could not remember the name of the street because I don't live on this street.
Right.
Retreat View Circle goes in a circle.
Right.
And I said, I don't know. And he goes, "We need an address." And I said, "I don't know an address." I think I gave them my address. And they said, "Give us directions to get to you." And I said, "If you tell the police to go straight at the clubhouse and make a left, my truck will be there." And again, they asked me where he went, what direction he went in, and I said, "I don't know." And then I thought to get out and look for a street sign.
Right.
So I got out of my car and I started walking.
Go ahead.
Oh. I was still on the phone with non-emergency and I started walking
Okay.
down this way. And because I didn't see a street sign here, but I knew if I went straight through that that's Retreat View Circle, and I could give him an address because he said, "Just give me the address of the house here in front of me." And there's no address because this is the back of the house. So I walked straight through here, and I didn't see him at all. I was walking, and I was still on the phone with the non-emergency.
Okay.
I got to about here, and I had a flashlight with me.
Okay.
The flashlight was dead though, and I looked around and I didn't see anybody. And I told non-emergency, I said, "You know what? He's gone. He's not even here."
Right.
So I still thought I could use their address, so I walked all the way through. I actually walked all the way to the street, and I was going to give them this address, and they said, "Well, if he's not there, do you still want a police officer?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Do you still want a police officer?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Are you following him?" Oh, I'm sorry, back there, they said, "Are you following him?" And I said, "Yes," because I was, in the area. And they said, "We don't need you to do that." And I said, "Okay." So that's when I walked straight through here to get the address so that I could meet the police officer. And then they said, I said, "He's not here." They said, "Do you still want him to come?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Where do you want him to come to?" And I said, "You know what, just tell him to meet me at my truck next to the clubhouse. If he goes straight into the clubhouse and makes a left, I have a Honda Ridgeline, silver Honda Ridgeline is parked right there. I'll meet him right there." So I started walking back. I passed here, I looked, I didn't see anything again, and I was walking back to my truck. And then when I got to right about here, he yelled from behind me to the side of me. He said, "Yo, you got a problem?" And I turned around, and I said, "No, I don't have a problem, man."
Where was he at?
He was about there, but he was walking towards me.
This direction here.
Yes, sir. Like I said, I was already past that, so I didn't see exactly where he came from, but he was about where you were.
Okay.
And I said, "No, I don't have a problem." And I went to go grab my cell phone, but I left it in a different pocket. I looked down in my pant pocket, and he said, "You got a problem now." And then he was here, and he punched me in the face.
Right here?
Right up around here.
Okay.
To be honest, I don't remember exactly. I think I stumbled, and I fell down, he pushed me down, somehow he got on top of me.
On the grass or on the cement?
It was more over towards here. I think I was trying to push him away from me, and then he got on top of me somewhere around here. And that's that's when I started screaming for help. I started screaming help, help, as loud as I could. And then is when he grabbed me. Oh, I tried to sit up, and that's when he grabbed me by the head and tried to slam my head down. And
Were you on the cement or were you on the...
my body was on the grass. My head was on the cement.
Because you were basically facing this way.
As I could fit through my jacket. Like my grass, and my head was on the and slamming. And he put his other hand on my mouth. He said, "Shut the fuck up." Warming was when he was hitting my head, it felt like my head was going to explode, and I thought I was going to lose consciousness. So I tried to squirm so that I could get, because he only had a small portion of my head on the concrete. So I tried to squirm off the concrete. And when I did that, somebody here opened the door, and I said, "Help me, help me." And they said, "I'll call 911. I said, "No, help me. I need help." And I don't know what they did, but that's when my jacket moved up, and I had my firearm on my right side hip. My jacket moved up, and he saw it. I feel like he saw it. He looked at it, and he said, "You're gonna die tonight, motherfucker." And he reached for it, but he reached, like I felt his arm going down to my side, and I grabbed it, and I just grabbed my firearm, and I shot him one time.
After you shot him, keep on going, what did he say?
After I shot him, he like sat up.
You're still in this position here, basically.
Yes,
You're
sir.
down here. You shot him, so he's in the grass.
Yes, sir. He was on top of me like this, and I shot him. And I didn't think I hit him, because he sat up, and he said, "Oh, you got me. You got it, you got me, you got it," something like that. So I thought he was just saying, "I know you have a gun now, I heard it, I'm giving up." So I don't know if I pushed him off me or he fell off me. Either way, I got on top of him, and I pushed his arms apart. And I said,
Kind of flipped him over.
I don't remember how I got on top of him, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
But I got on his back, and I moved his arms apart, because when he was repeatedly hitting me in the face and the head, I thought he had something in his hands. So I moved his hands apart.
So you had him face down then?
Yes, face down, and I was on his back. And then somebody came with a flashlight, and I thought it was a police officer. So I said, "Are you the police?" And I still had my handgun out, and I told him, I said, are you the police? And my gun's right here. And he goes, no, I'm not. I'm calling the police. I said, "Don't call the police. Help me restrain this guy." And he said, "I'm calling the police. I'm calling the police." And I said, "I already called. They're on their way. They're coming. I need your help." And then's when the police officer came around. I saw the police officer, so I stood up and I holstered my weapon. And he said, "Who shot him?" And I said, "I did." And I put my hands up. I said, "I did." And I don't know if he told me to, I just automatically turned my back to him. And I lifted my shirt and I said, "My gun's right there." And I told him a few times, I said, "My gun's right there." And he goes, "Okay, I understand. I just need you to keep your hands up." And he put the handcuffs on me, and then he took my firearm from me.
Any questions?
I don't have anything else that
No, sir.
you got no idea where he came from, or if he was over in this area? You walked by here, you never saw him?
No, I didn't see him at all. I looked as I was on the phone with the non-emergency. I looked, and I didn't see him at all. And I said, "He's gone." I think I said something to the effect.
What was lighting about that time?
It's dark.
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 We fight with that
None
all
of the
the
porch
time.
lights were on? Nothing out back there?
No.
It's real dark. We're gonna recamp at 7:30. See, get a better. So 7:15 when this happened, right? 7:15.
I could look at my phone.
Yeah, let's see. About who the person was.
few stitches, but she'd rather not put them in, as long as I didn't mess with my head, because the skin was already healing nicely. She said she didn't have to put stitches in right away.
Is it emergency room or your primary care?
My primary care.
Did you give you the African insurance or anything?
Pain medicine, and she gave me a referral for an ENT because she said that the swelling wouldn't let them do anything to my nose right now. But once the swelling went down, if I had a deviated septum or a disfigured septum, they would be able to fix it, but there's nothing they could do right now.
Okay. Let's go back to your house. We'll talk over there. Let me see what this person has to say. I'll meet you back over in a second. Let me see what this person has to say. Will it help as far as your injuries documented from something like that, if possible?
Oh,
If not,
I'll ask her for them.
Yeah.
She made note of everything.
Let me write them down real quick.
Yeah, just have to turn around, get the back of his head, butterfly.
Do you want me to move? I said, do you want me to move or are you moving? I'm sorry. Moving also.
It's always better to have you say a couple words to her.
Oh, she said I had a,
Your brother saw something that we needed to know. It's always better to have
sprained SI. Something about my sciatic something. And she gave me just this scrapes there. I don't think so. No, I had a long sleeve shirt and a jacket on top. So. No, he was just focused on my head. There's the little bruising there. There's on there. There's a cut
It's like
here.
the swelling went down, because I remember yesterday, I remember seeing swelling around right here, and I don't see it now.
My wife is an RN student, so she went to work. It's good to keep her busy, I guess.
Investigator Serena, I want to move now to February the 29th. Did you have further contact with the defendant?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And was that at the police, Sanford Police Department?
Yes, it was.
Was an interview conducted of the defendant on that day?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And were his Miranda rights given by Investigator Singleton?
Yes, they were.
Okay. Your Honor, in terms of time frame, we're going to play a recording now. It's about 45 minutes or so, so I'm fine, but I don't know.
Recess before we begin the recording, or just go forward? You're good? Okay.
Your Honor, at this time, we would move into evidence, State Exhibit 181. I'm sorry, that was already, it is, I apologize, 182.
Okay, no objection?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay, 182 will come into evidence.
And Your Honor, we would ask that the court read the same instructions we previously.
I need it from the clerk. Ladies and gentlemen, at the direction of the court, certain portions of defendant's interview with the Sanford Police Department investigators have been excised or redacted based on legal determinations made by the court. The parts excised or redacted are not relevant, and you are not to concern yourselves with why this occurred or with the content of any excised or redacted portions.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
You had previously testified about a recording that was audio. This one is actually videotaped, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
There are parts of it, though, that apparently you have a recorder too that's only audio. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you're not in the room, I guess there's audio parts, and then you also, at the end, leave the room with the defendant and, I believe, Investigator Singleton, too, where it's only audio because you go somewhere else where there's not an ability to videotape this.
Yes, sir.
But you're back in the room? After reading through your again? And then I'll just have you sign like you did before. It's just a different format. The other one was on a cord and this was on. The Constitution requires I inform you, that you have the right to remain silent. Anything said will be used in court as evidence against you. You're entitled to talk to an attorney now or have them present now or anytime during questioning. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you without cost. Do you desire to consult with an attorney first or have one during this interview? Okay. If at any time hereafter you wish to remain silent or have an attorney present, all questioning will be stopped. Okay. Has anyone at any time threatened, coerced, promised you anything in order to induce you to make a statement? No? Okay. Do you understand your rights?
Yes.
Okay. And do you want to talk with us at this time?
Yes.
Okay. And signing this doesn't mean you're not going home. You got to go home regardless tonight. But,
I didn't even know that.
just don't want you to think, I'm signing this.
Thank you.
It means you're, because normally it's because you're in custody. You're not really in custody. You came here voluntarily, right?
Yes.
Okay. And witnesses. And how you doing?
Better.
And you look better.
I'll be right back.
Actually, you should too. You can do it? Oh, you got one. Look at that. I got one of the time. Got one bathroom back here. Go back to the document. Boy.
She is surprisingly well.
Sweet. I think that was my hair first that time.
Stronger than me.
Was right?
She's stronger than me.
She's stronger than you.
Can I ask you an irrelevant question?
Just wait till he's in there. He's the lead investigator.
It doesn't have to do with the investigation.
Oh, yeah, it is.
When that neighbor came up and was talking to me, you got up next to him. Did you get up next to him because you thought he was like... Did you position yourself strategically like that?
No, I was just trying to hear what he was saying.
Oh.
He seemed nervous.
Oh.
I didn't think he was like gonna beat you up enough. Is that what you mean?
I thought you were... Because the four of you kind of got in between.
That's just natural.
Oh.
Do it so many times at once.
When you kept your firearm away from me, I think.
Yeah, that's normal. You get used to doing that. Well, I'm going to do it. Finished. Hopefully. Let me try to come in.
This investigator served the Sanford Police Department. Today's date is Wednesday, February the 29th, 2012. We locate the Sanford Police Department, 815 West 13th Street, City of Sanford, Seminole County, Florida. The time is now 17:19 hours. That's 5:19 p.m. Here to discuss case number 2012-501136, the shooting death of a
Trayvon Benjamin Martin, which occurred on February 26th. It was a Sunday at approximately 7:30 p.m.
Let me make sure the record's clear. That prior 20 seconds or so, actually, are you outside the interview room and are you recording on your recorder before you walk in?
Yes, sir, I am.
And when you come into the interview room, does that recorder stay on in addition to the videotape that's going on?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
What happened this evening is that you essentially saw somebody who you would think that was doing something wrong. And you ever heard of yourself? Just, okay, that's what happened. This person was not doing anything bad. You want to know a person that died? Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Benjamin Martin. He was born in 1995, February the 5th. He was 17 years old. I care with folks that care. In his possession, we found a can of iced tea and a bag of Skittles and about $40 in cash. Do you have any prior training in law enforcement at all? I mean, any kind of just the legal side of it, the constitutional law. Okay, so you went through but as far as identifying people and stuff like that, as far as what you look forward to make them really suspicious? Just when we organized an annual neighborhood watch event, they told us, like with I think a PowerPoint presentation and some flyers. I wasn't privy to that, but if you guys continue neighborhood watch, typically speaking, at nighttime, the garb is black on black on black with a black hoodie. Now this guy had dark gray hoodie, so it was dark, but his pants were beige. Not quite your, prime suspect type, but I listened to the phone call that he made to the 911 line. Okay. Is what time, what was going through at the time?
2 or 3 weeks prior to that, I seen somebody looking in the window of the house that he was in front of.
Was he red or black?
Black.
Okay.
And the guy that lives there, I know he's actively watching. He's Caucasian. The guy, the suspicious looking guy, went up to the house. I was walking my dog around the neighborhood, and he walked up to the house, and he was smoking. I'm sorry, he wasn't smoking at that time. He turned around, and he saw me walking my dog. So he lit a cigarette and leaned up against the wall, pretending like he lived there. And so I walked past him, and I called non-emergency. And I got under a street light, and they asked me if I could see where he went, or if he went inside the house. I said no. And they said, can you get to where you can see? I really don't want to move from this area. And they needed the address, and I don't know why the adrenaline's rushing, 1,000 things went through my mind. I gave them what I thought was my address, further down in the 1900 building instead of the 1400. And when I walked to see the address, I saw the end of the house, and he was at the side of the house looking in the window. He either threw or spit he looked at me, threw spit his cigarette out, and then ran around the back. So I told non-emergency, I think it was still non-emergency at that time, that, I don't know where you guys are coming from, but he's around back. And I don't know where he went. And I stayed in front of the house where the streetlight was. And I waited and I waited and I waited, and then it hit me. The police came and drove past me. And then is when it hit me that I gave them what I thought was my address instead of that address. I called back and I said, the correct address. The police officer came back. I didn't even see because the house was completely dark. The window was open. So, and the front door wasn't, the police later told me the front door was unlocked. All the windows were open in the house. And the front door was unlocked. The garage was open. So they went in, they cleared the house. Oh, they asked me for the owner's name and phone number. And then they sorry. That's why I felt this was suspicious.
Okay. What did you see Trayvon doing that caught you as being suspicious?
He was looking at the house intently, and then...
What, the same house?
The same house that I had called about before.
Did he stop?
He stopped.
In front of the house?
He stopped in front of the house, and then I drove... There was a car, like, backing up, so I slowed down, and then I drove around him, and he kept looking at me, and then when I passed, it was raining, and I said, you know what, he's not walking briskly to get out of the rain. He wasn't, he didn't look like a marathon runner that is active and, like, you know, the trains in the rain. He was just walking slowly and in the grass, not on the sidewalk, and I just said, something's off. So that's why I called an emergency.
Okay. You know, you're going to go on a lot of scrutiny over this, correct? Okay. The profiling aspect of the whole thing. Had this person been right, would you feel the same way?
Yes.
We're in the process of going through his phone. We got a little bit of the battery died. We're still working on that. There's a possibility that whatever happened was he knew that him was caught on videotape. And this is going to be a final interview. I'm not talking anymore after this. We're good. You know what I'm saying? That right there. That's his cell phone.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's the camera. There's a very strong possibility that the responsibility is either going to help you or, you know, not help you. And that's why I got to clarify a few things about what happened out there. How tall was you weigh?
5'8", 194.
Okay. Trevor was a 6 foot, about 150 pounds. That's a gunshot you put in him. We're right through his heart. Okay. Skinny kid. Obviously, like I said, a lot of questions are being brought up. Like I said, if there's anything that you haven't said that might be in that phone,
I prayed to God that someone videotapes it, or that the neighborhood had put up a video camera that I didn't know about or something.
that's not guaranteed, but like I said, it's a possibility. I'm hoping myself. Okay? Another thing too, as far as 25 and 30 punches, I've consulted with a lot of people, not quite consistent with your injuries. You do have injuries, however. How did he manage to bang your head? Okay, correct me if I misunderstood what you said here as far as slamming the head into the concrete. Into the cement thing. So how did he do that?
I was on my back after he first punched me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I immediately fell down, or he threw me down, or I was stumbling. I ended up on my back,
Mm-hmm.
and he was on top of me, mounted,
Okay.
and he kept punching me. And then when I started yelling for help, that's when he grabbed my head and started just slamming.
Grab your head. By your ears? By, how to say?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Every time he punched my nose, it just...
How many times? Okay. How many times you got punched in the nose? A couple.
I don't remember.
Okay, you never got a chance to hit him. You have no defense wounds here. Any bruising on your body at all?
No.
No broken ribs, no fractured ribs, none of that?
No.
Pain? No?
My doctor said I sprained my SI. It feels like a big bruise, but it's deep in there. So.
Is that ever something like this happened?
Pardon?
Did you see his face like this when that happened?
No, sir.
Okay. He's young, tall, and skinny. 17. That's him again. I'm sure this is going to have to someday meet his family. That's just how these things work eventually. And they have a lot of questions, obviously. And I want to way somehow, and like I said, I answer to his family right now. Why didn't it occur to you to go ahead and tell him? I mean, a lot of what we do out here in law enforcement is basically a lot of talking and a lot of casual encounters, consensual encounters, we call them. Yeah, we might be trying to take something wrong, but it's just to get a feel for the person. Did it ever occur to you to go ahead and actually ask this person what he was doing out there? No, sir. Was it fear, precaution, safety, all the above, or I didn't want to confront him, and this wasn't my job. Okay. So, but not your job's not to really do anything wrong when it comes like that. It wasn't your job to monitor him either, but for future reference, I mean, he usually dismissed a lot of this kind of insanity. I mean, had that been done, and that's, you know, and from our vantage point, you've had two opportunities to identify yourself as somebody who was actually not meant to do him harm. Problem being is that what if it's in his mind's eye, which I can't get into because he's passed, that he perceives you as a threat. Okay? He perceives you as a threat. He has every right to go and defend himself, especially when you reach into your pocket to grab the cell phone. Okay? What I'm gravitating to here is to say that, like I said, could that have been a possibility for him getting so enraged at you? What do you think his mindset was? What made him snap? Can you fill in that blank? The other thing was when he walked up to my car, he reached in his waistband and held his hand there. He was probably holding his iced tea. I don't know. That's fine, but did he say anything? It was raining, so I had my windows up and I was on the phone. I didn't. How close to your car did you get? Maybe a car length? What do you think set him off? I don't know.
I'm still not understanding. When he walked up to your car, why didn't you say anything to him?
I guess fear. I didn't want to confront him. The same reason I
You were afraid of him?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you say he ran?
Yes.
Then you get out of your car and run after him?
I didn't run after him, no. I walked to find a street name or a street sign, and he had already cut out between the houses. So I knew that if I walked straight through that little sidewalk, I knew that that was my street, that I had a retreat circle. But when I was walking around, my truck lights stay on, and he wasn't there.
So was that portion of that T that you could see straight through lit up by your truck light?
It was lit up partially because it only stays on for a few, I don't know how long, but it stays on for a while.
When you got out, you shut the car off and took your keys with you?
Yes. And you didn't, okay, and at that point you didn't see him. Okay, you did say on the phone call he's running, and you got in your car, but yet you decided to go ahead to orientate yourself. How many streets are in that subdivision? I think 3. Okay. And you're part of the homeowners association. Are you head of the neighborhood watch? Yes, sir. Okay. Once again, something else I got to try to explain away. How do you not know that 3 streets are in your neighborhood for 3 years? Well, yeah, you have really no idea. How do I explain that one away that you're saying that you didn't know what street was one of the 3 streets that the community that you're the head of the homeowners, the head of the works? You know what I'm saying? How do I do that? I mean, to be honest with you, I have a bad memory anyway. That's why I gave. So that might explain why I didn't know the street that you were at. And I just have a terrible memory. And I gave, when they asked me the address, I don't know why I always think my address is 1960 and it's 1950. I don't know why. That's almost confusing, that whole place. I had a hard time orienting myself also. I mean, yeah, I got it. Okay, but one thing I can tell you is that the streets, those middle streets, I can't even remember the names now, but I know that they changed names. Mm-hmm. Once it branches left, it's a different one. Once it branches right, it's a different name, so. But like I said, that's going to be one of the issues that I have to clarify, and that's why we're here today. Your holster. What kind of holster do you have? This is just one I bought at a gun show, like a nylon inner waistband. Like
I didn't eat my hand anymore because he let go of my mouth. I don't remember if I was still screaming or not. That's when I grabbed his hand and I grabbed my firearm and fired. So once he let go, that I realized I didn't eat my hand and he was going to kill me.
What did he suffocate you for?
Felt like
Should be forever, I'm sure.
felt like hours, but I don't know.
Is there a full-size line or a small line?
Come back.
Okay. And you were able to overpower him as far as like holding his wrist. You gained wrist, we call it wrist control. You gained wrist control on him basically, and you were able to basically liberate both hands.
Yes.
Okay. And you raised it up. Do you remember hitting him with the pistol?
No, sir.
Distance-wise?
I just remember not wanting to hit my own hand that was holding his, so I went past my hand and I fired in his direction.
Okay, this is what or anything?
Yeah.
Some cold?
No, thanks. This is fine. I did remember that. You said that the operator told me to stay in my car. They didn't tell me to stay in my car. They said, "Are you following him?" And I was walking where he had walked, and I said, "Yes." And they said, "We don't need you to do that." And I said, "Okay."
Okay, yeah. And then you had already gotten out of your car. I didn't hear any bells and like you opened the door, the ding ding or something. I didn't hear any of that either, so yeah.
It doesn't do that.
It does? Okay, I didn't catch that. You catch the recording?
I thought I could hear the door close. I thought I could hear the door
Okay,
close.
yeah, that was kind of unclear on that. Okay, well, it's true, so when he said that you already got out of your car. But once again, this also lends to the question on, once the fear for not lowering your window, because he's right in front of you, two, outside exposing yourself to the possibility of being attacked by the person.
When he comes up to your car, you're telling them, right, that he's reaching in his waist down? So what do you think is the possibility that he has?
Well, the guy 2 weeks prior, did the same thing when he saw me. He like put his hand in his jacket and watched me walk by, and then he lit up a cigarette. So I thought he was just trying to look tough or intimidate.
So you didn't think he had a weapon?
No, not at the time.
You thought he was just trying to bluff you?
Yes, ma'am.
Did that scare you? The bluff?
No.
You ever worked security before?
No, sir.
You worked in a party one time,
Oh, yes.
right? Okay, was that painful or just?
It wasn't professional or anything. It was
Okay. There's a thing called challenging somebody. Now, you didn't challenge this person while he was out next to your car, so you got it. You sound kind of frustrated on the phone conversation. So everybody's going to hear these things, you know, and you went out there just like you said, and you hung up 911, and right after that, you turned around and he was.
No, sir.
Okay.
I walked past where he went through to go to Retreat B Circle.
Which way that he heading back to his house where he was staying?
I have no idea what.
That's where he was going. I'm just letting you know that.
But when I walked and I saw he wasn't there anymore, they asked me for my address, and I gave them my address. And I said, I don't really like giving out my address because they may know where I go or where I live.
So he would have been in earshot of you, you thought, but you couldn't see him.
I could not see him at all.
But how close did he? Okay.
I didn't like anyone.
That's fine, that's fine.
And they said, around that time is when they said, we don't need you to follow him. So I continued walking straight to my street. When I came back, I was coming back and I passed the sidewalk that he went to.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see where he came from, but he was not there. And I told non-emergency, he's not here. And they said, you still want us to send the car? And I said, yes.
Shelter was out there? Yeah, that's what it said, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you were talking, you just had a discussion about meeting at the mailbox, and then you said, never mind, have them call my phone, and I'll tell them where I'm at.
Oh, I thought I told them because I first pulled up at the clubhouse, and I gave them that address, if I remember serves me, and then I told them my location according to the clubhouse. I said, if you go straight through the clubhouse and make a left, you'll see my truck there, and I think I gave them a description of my truck. either the color, the make, and the model. And when they said, where do you want them to meet you? I said, just have them meet me back at my truck. And that's when I was walking towards my truck.
Okay, so when you first hear this Bridger, what the fuck's your problem? Correct?
Something to that effect.
Did he use the word homie?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Did you at that time ever say to him, I'm neighborhood watch?
No.
Did it not occur to you?
No, I always said, I don't have a problem. And I started backing away from him.
But you kind of did have a problem, that's why you were following him, right? You had a concern with him.
I was scared.
You were scared to tell them that you had a concern? That you were neighborhood watch? You were afraid to tell him that?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but these are the questions you're going to ask us,
No, I
you're going to give
understand.
him an answer.
I was
It
scared.
seemed like the perfect opportunity to say, look, I'm neighborhood watch, I don't recognize you, are you staying here?
Like I said, he came up out of nowhere. I didn't even see him. I was walking back to my car thinking that I was going to meet a police officer there. So when he popped up, he just caught me off guard. I didn't think I'd tell him.
But can you see how that would maybe frighten him? You've been following him now for a whole hour?
What do you mean, on foot or?
Yeah, you're watching him. Okay. He makes it clear to you, he sees you, he walks up to your car, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
He was making it clear to you, I recognize you're following me.
I didn't know if he was doing that or he was doubling back what he was doing.
No, but the reason why he said why you have a problem was because, for no other reason, because he let you were following him. In other words, you were just walking randomly. He didn't walk up to you and say, yeah, fucking problem. He didn't try to rob you. He didn't try to, he's asking what the fuck's your problem. Now, could it possibly you said, I don't have a fucking problem?
No.
None?
I
Okay.
didn't. No.
Well, your reason going law enforcement because you got a brief on justice?
No, I wanted to before that.
Why'd you get, well, did you have the aspiration of doing that?
Being a police
Yeah.
officer? Yes, sir.
Do you think he was scared? Do you think he thought you were trying to hurt him? I mean, because even in the tape you say he's running. First of all, he can see you're following him. That would be the reason he would come to your car and let you know, I see you.
Pull in my car, right?
And then, instead of having a conversation with him, you put up your window.
Yes.
So this might seem creepy to him. So someone's following him, and when he tries to talk to him to maybe see what's going on, he creeps. And then when he runs, you follow him. Yeah, and maybe you're frightened him, I don't know.
I wish I knew.
Oh, I know. It's when people are following you or trying to talk to you and trying to ask you what you're doing, and who are they? Why do they have a right to ask me anything? Who are they? You know what I mean? You're trying to keep people from coming in your neighborhood, bothering people. Yet you could give the appearance that you're asking people for information and you haven't even told them who you are.
We're not supposed to.
I think that's what you said you did on that, right? You never told him who you were.
No. I didn't have the opportunity.
Well, you could have told him. Right? When he came to your car, instead of putting up your window, you could have said on neighborhood watch.
He wasn't like next to my window or anything.
No, I thought you told me he circled your whole car.
He did, but I don't know if he circled the entire car, but he came around to the side. But he wasn't like within earshot, and I didn't want to confront him. I was happy he was staying in the area so the police could question him. In the past, when I got involved in this back in August, it was because my wife saw people fleeing the place they had robbed. And ever since then, whenever we see someone suspicious, we call. But feeling they know the neighborhood inside and out. You guys come real quick. Sometimes you show up with 3 cars, but they're not. I have a wife at home. I'm not past me. I tried fighting him down, but I guess he was...
This on a previous call.
Yes, ma'am. 2-3 weeks ago.
Oh, for the one you were talking about earlier with the kids looking in the windows?
Yes, ma'am. And I tried flying the cop down thinking that...
I didn't know the guy that went to the next one was the same guy that you had seen.
I recognized his face.
Oh, so you saw his face pretty good?
Yes, ma'am. I was walking and I walked right past him.
You didn't think this kid was the same kid, did you?
No, that kid was arrested.
Okay. But they get out. I mean, you didn't think that this was possibly the same kid coming back.
No, ma'am. At the time of the encounter with him, was there anything in your hand? I think my flashlight. Okay, your flashlight. Was it working or was it not working? It was dead. It was dead. Okay. It was not clicking on. Yes. It was your right hand or left hand? I don't recall. Okay. And you looked away from him? Is that what happened? When you got punched, or did you see the punch coming? No, I walked past where he went through. And then I started walking back to my car. And that's when he yelled out and I turned around. How far was he away from that? Was he up on you already or? Can't tell. I don't recall. As soon as he did that, I started backing up towards my car. And that's when I wanted to call 911 instead of non-emergency. Do you realize how the way these cases can go? Yes, sir. Okay, well, how can they go? Either justifiable homicide or murder. Okay. And that's why, like I'm saying, I mean, I'm going to try something with you that I've done before. It's called assisted memory recall. It's not hypnosis. It's just something that, I mean, just every try. Go ahead and close your eyes, man. Okay, and once you put yourself back in the scene, Sunday night, at 7 o'clock, you're with this kid. You get out of your car, talking to the dispatcher. You hang up to the dispatcher. Okay. Give yourself a couple seconds to go ahead and think about what happened after that. Now you're going to try to act like exactly what happened, okay? I'm going to be a kid. What the fuck is your problem? You say what you say. I don't have a problem. At that point, nothing else was said. No, think. No, sir. What did you say the first time he hit you? I don't think I said a thing. Telephone conversation prior. Okay, we're good. All right. Nothing at all? No, sir. Okay. That never works. Just, you know, you gotta try it though. For me, it's not happening.
Tell us if you could, do you move now somewhere else?